Albion. This suburb seems to have two beginnings. Well, how did that happen? I'm going to see if I can find out. Breakfast Creek, 1824. This is where surveyor John Oxley thought that the Redcliffe penal settlement could be moved to and re-established. So how did Breakfast Creek get its name? It was in September 1824 when Oxley and his party had camped overnight, I think across the creek where Newstead House is. The next morning at breakfast, they were approached by a group of local Indigenous people, one of whom made off with Oxley's hat. It was returned a little while later. To commemorate the incident, Oxley named this creek Breakfast Creek. This lovely little park next to Sandgate Road was the site of a very extensive Indigenous camp. In fact, I don't even think you could say it was just a camp, because that denotes something that was temporary or ephemeral. This was, by all accounts, a permanent settlement. There could be many dozens, perhaps 200 or 300 people living along Breakfast Creek, along this area here, heading up towards the Albion Five Ways. I don't even know the name of this park now on the map. I just looked it up. It says Brisbane Parks. So I don't know if it has an official name. The Indigenous people had a very sophisticated series of traps and little weirs and fishing techniques just down there at Breakfast Creek. And they supplied enormous quantities of fish to Brisbane and were well paid for it as well. And it wasn't just here at this park where there was an extensive settlement. Various camps and other settlements stretched all the way along the Brisbane River from here to Hamilton. I cannot possibly figure out what the story behind all that is. Aha, plaques. What do we got here? Oh, it does give a name for this park. Yawagera Park. Yowoggera. Yawagera Park. Oh, that's why I didn't see it. It was right in front of me.
Yawagera means corroboree place, and was the Turrbal people's reference for Breakfast Creek and all the surrounding area.
Just waiting for the rowers to go past to get a nicer shot. Oh, here they are. I've just arrived at the Albion Five Ways. The reason why I've come up here is because the very first recorded European to live here was a fellow who was known as Old Adam. We don't know really anything else about him. His slab hut and vegetable garden were somewhere around about here at the Five Ways, and he made his money by ferrying people across Enoggera Creek, or Breakfast Creek.
Kingsford Smith Drive was established between about 1829 and 1830, and it was the road from the Moreton Bay Penal Settlement up to the women's convict farm at Eagle Farm.
In the 1840s, 50s and 60s, maybe even into the 1870s, there were quite a lot of raids and attacks, certainly by local law enforcement, police and soldiers, on the Indigenous camps right here in this area. The Indigenous people would then retaliate onto nearby farms, and it went back and forth. The camps that were here hung on into the 1880s. This area here at Breakfast Creek and the southern Albion area was very much a part of the Frontier Wars. We often think of the Frontier Wars as being some distant series of events, but nothing could be further from the truth. It was happening right here. The about, 4Ks, 5Ks from the Brisbane CBD.
The Moreton Bay Penal Settlement was closed in 1842, and barely 2 years later in 1844, an area along the future Kingsford Smith Drive is shown as already being under cultivation, with 2 structures on it. This is where Cooksley Street and Hunt Street are today.
Crosby Road. This used to be known as Gaythorne Road. Heading further along Crosby Road, heading east, I think it is, the land gets higher up that way. This area, starting about here, was the site of a quarry. This quarry was set up in 1860 by Andrew Petrie. There was a lot of quarrying going on there in Triassic rock about 220 million years ago. They found a lot of fossils there. The stone extracted from this quarry was quite bright. It really was quite a white colour. However, it was just a little bit too soft, and as such the quarry eventually closed down.
In 1861, George Fisher's Terracotta Works was established. In 1885, Campbell and Sons bought out the works. They named it the Albion Brick and Pottery Works. And in the late 1880s, they bought Petrie's Quarry. It closed in 1948. In 1864, the Albion Hotel was opened, built by Thomas Hazelden. At this time, it was a wooden building out in the countryside. Hazelden gave it this name because the local quarry had white stone which, according to legend, reminded him of the White Cliffs of Dover. The old name for Britain was Albion. The hotel was very popular for many years, though the opening of the Breakfast Creek Hotel nearly 30 years later took some of its business away. It was rebuilt in stone as a larger building in 1883 to cater for increased business. The white stone of the quarry also inspired the naming of a grand house called Whitecliffe, which was built in 1875.
That's the Albion train station. That opened in 1882, and it sparked a pretty immediate building boom in this area. Within 7 years, the Albion area went from being completely rural to being a busy commercial destination. Never been round here at all before. This is a whole new area for me. I'm now looking for the Baptist Church. So this bit of road here, this is part of Albion Road. It's been bypassed by the Albion overpass just over there. So this is now a little dead-end street. You can see the way the road used to come. It's up there behind me and came in a straight line through here and up to the train station where there was a level crossing. But it was too busy, and so they built the overpass. There it is. The Albion Baptist Church, opened in 1883. No. It's one hell of a push. I think it's locked.
In 1884, the Albion Township Estate was advertised, and that same year, the Breakfast Creek Estate, just to the south, was also advertised.
I'm on Higgs Street, and I've just come across the Temple of the Holy Triad. This was built for the Chinese Buddhist community, and it dates from 1885. The building was constructed primarily with materials brought directly from China, in addition to a small gang of labourers and artisans who also came along to put this building up. After its completion, they returned to China.
Around about 1885, a track was established at a tea tree swamp that later became the Albion Park Raceway. Andrew Lang Petrie mortgaged his family home to build an amusement park on the site. A dance hall was erected that featured local popular band the Monday Pops, plus at one time Buffalo Bill and some Native American Indians.
And that rather dark building behind me there, that's the old public hall. It's on the corner of Sandgate and Birkbeck Street. It was open in 1887. Not too long after it opened, it became a movie theatre and was known as the Empire Picture Theatre. Now it's just a bunch of different businesses. So really, where I am here, heading up the hill a bit, this area out behind me here, this is the old part of Albion. This is where the suburb began. And across the road is the Exchange Building. That dates from 1889. Over its years, it has hosted a confectionery store, a butcher shop, and numerous pharmacies. And the empty bit of ground next to the Exchange Building used to be the Queensland National Bank. That opened in the late 1880s, but it closed in 1910. It was demolished in the 1970s. All right, the people you meet in Breakfast Creek, this is...
Hey, Stuart from Mob. Hi, Rob.
Wow, well, you got an awesome bike.
Cheers, man.
I got it. Mine was a second-hand one from Kmart. And then the pedal fell off, so I haven't ridden it since.
We got to start some.
Behind me is the modern one. That was built in 1958. The bridge was here. That's the Breakfast Creek Hotel just there. And the bridge was right in front of it. And for some strange reason, it was constructed overseas. When the bridge finally arrived here and they readied it to be positioned into place, they discovered that the bridge was actually too short. So what do? You've got a bridge that doesn't reach to the other side of the creek. The solution they came up with was to extend the creek bank out a little bit further by building these stone abutments. This is the one outside the hotel, and the other one is just over there. So they shortened the distance that the bridge had to cross. Right, so you've got the bridge just down here, which leads us very nicely to the establishment of the Breakfast Creek Hotel. That was opened in 1889. The hotel was built by Scottishman and former Brisbane Mayor William McNaughton Galloway. In fact, his initials appear just up the top there on the left side, the front of the building. And apparently the building was designed in the French Renaissance style. Beautiful building. I've had lunch there a couple of times. Unfortunately, Mr. Galloway wasn't around for very many years after the opening of this hotel to enjoy it. One night, after about 3 weeks of heavy drinking, he was put upstairs to one of the empty rooms up there, and his friends and co-workers locked the door because he was just so drunk. Anyway, he managed to get out through the window, hanging onto the edge of the building. Unfortunately and predictably, he slipped and fell, landed on his head, and subsequently passed away. And of course, there's stories of his ghost inhabiting the building even today. Cycling. I haven't done cycling in years. I should get back into it. They say it's like falling off a bicycle. You never forget. While I'm down here at the hotel, and very interestingly, there was a previous Breakfast Creek hotel somewhere around about here. We don't know exactly where the hotel used to be. It was unconnected to the current one, i.e. the person who started this one had nothing to do with the previous one. The previous one was opened by a Mrs. Mary Hennessy. We know that it was in existence around about 1862, though it's quite possible it was opened for business much earlier. Mrs. Hennessy's Breakfast Creek Hotel seems to have gone out of business in the late 1860s. There was a considerable economic downturn in the 1860s.
Years later, in 1884, there was the Hennessy estate in that very location, and all the lots were sold within an hour. 5 years later, in 1889, there was a second Hennessy estate sale.
Just behind me there is Amy Street, and just ahead of me is Agnes Street, which means... Oh, and the hotel, the Breakfast Creek Hotel, is just behind me over there. Now, that opened in 1889. The following year, in 1890, the Breakfast Creek State School opened. And that opened right here, where this construction sciences building is now. Opened in 1890, closed in 1961. In 1899, the Albion Hill estate was put up for advertising. This is where it was. Today, this is the corner of Sandgate Road and Bonnie Avenue. However, back then, Bonnie Avenue was the original course of Sandgate Road. Sandgate Road today keeps going that way, and it was known as New Sandgate Road. Wow. Hensel Real Estate has been here for a long time. That's Ernest there, 1881 to 1940. Next year, he'll make junior assistant. I do like to make a joke and have a laugh. It's one of my principles. If you don't like it, well, I have others.
In 1910, a Melbourne businessman by the name of John Wren bought the Albion Amusement Park, and unregistered race meetings were held there. The place was informally known as the Creek, due to its proximity to Breakfast Creek.
Just having a look, where am I? Anstey Street. Well, that means that where I am right now is outside the former post office. That was opened in 1925, but it replaced an earlier post office on the same site that was built out of wood. That opened in the late 1890s. This one is no longer a post office, it's now a politician's office. Stephen Bates, federal member for Brisbane. He's got a nice office here.
There were 3 attempts by thieves to blow up the safe in the post office. In 1926, explosives were used to no effect. In 1931, they tried again with a charge of gelignite. Again, no luck. The third attempt was in 1933, this time with dynamite. Still, the safe was safe. The Commonwealth sold the current building in 1995.
The old Albion fire station. What a beautiful building. It was opened in 1925 and closed in 1961. Now it's just a few metres inside Wooloowin, right about here. It says Albion Lodge there. Now what would that mean? It's possible some of the firemen lived here. Leaving the fire station, here's some information about the Albion flour mill.
It was in 1932 that the Albion flour mill began operation. It began by making baker's white flour, meal, bran and pollard, and Anchor was the brand name of the flour. Their products were for the commercial market. In 1957, they began producing self-raising flour for white wings for the domestic market. It burnt down in 2013. Apparently the victim of arson.
I'm on Ulestar Street. This is actually at the back of the Breakfast Creek Hotel. There's the car park. In 1942, there were 2 brothels here. These were to serve or service the US servicemen who were stationed at various US camps at Doomben, Eagle Farm and Hamilton. The demand for the industry of prostitutes was so great that prostitutes were encouraged to relocate here from Sydney by the federal government. This was unofficially known as the Curtin Special. The women came up here and got to work. There were just thousands and thousands of American soldiers here. However, there was a problem, because just behind me there on the other side of Amy Street, that was where the Breakfast Creek State School was. And the principal of the school was not too happy about having brothels and lines of US servicemen hanging around this area. Wasn't really a lot he could do about it, but I understand he was at the fence quite a lot, ready to threaten any US serviceman who happened to take an interest in the older girls of the school. Rightly so. Anyway, of course, the school is long gone now, as are the brothels.
On this map from 1943, you can see that what is now Albion was more or less split between 3 different suburbs. Albion itself on the western side, Albion Park to the east of it, and Breakfast Creek to the south.
That's the Albion overpass. It opened in 1962. That says Yule Strata. That's the second time I've seen the word Yule here. There was Yule Star Street down near the Paceway, behind the Breakfast Creek Hotel. I wonder what it means. You'll find out. The old TAB building. It was opened in 1976. Love it or loathe it, it's still here. It's looking much better now. I think the Queensland Fire Brigade or some fire department are moving into this building, or maybe in the process of doing so. This is part of the Hudson Common. There's a whole big new redevelopment of this area. I must say the building really looks nice now, i.e. not brutalist. It was in 2002 that Sandgate Road outside the Breakfast Creek Hotel was closed. They were building all the bypass and everything and digging down. The road continues underneath there, but before 2002, if you stepped out the front of the hotel, you pretty much stepped out onto Sandgate Road. And I've actually just found this little plaque. Look at this. See that? BCC 2002. That's when the inner city bypass cutting underneath here, linking with Kingsford Smith Drive, was put through. You find these on all council bridges and government bridges. Sometimes it's usually like that, just a very, very simple little thing, and the date when the bridge or the overpass or the underpass was built. So keep an eye out for those. I spot them everywhere now. It seems pretty clear that Albion did indeed have 2 beginnings. The first one, really the oldest part of it, one of the oldest parts of Brisbane, is down along Kingsford Smith Drive, the Breakfast Creek area. Albion itself, the suburb name, originates further north, with the train station and also the quarry, because of the white stone coming out of it, and people thinking, oh, it looks like the White Cliffs of Dover. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this little jaunt around Albion. Had a great time making this one. Knew next to nothing about Albion, and I've learnt a lot, and I hope you did too. If you liked the video, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the like button, and I'll see you again soon.